Hi, Martha. Martha
Hi.
Eason. Um, I just have a question. Do they call you Marta or Martha?
That's a great question. In Germany, I get a lot of different RTH is very difficult for Germans to pronounce.
Very difficult.
So I hear a lot of Marfas or Marta, and
Right.
I answer
Or
to all of them.
Martha, right.
Martha.
Right. But you're doing amazing things, and you're going from Oldenburg, where you've been for what, 6 years now?
6 seasons.
60s to Karlsruhe, which is a big important house. So it's really a great career that you're making. And knock on wood,
Mhm.
we'll wish you the best for that. We'll get into that. Now we know where you're going and where you've been, but tell us where you come from. Uh, Tell us, where you grew up, where you went to school, how you decided to be an opera singer, even.
That's a great question. I grew up in Southwest Virginia. I was born in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I grew up in a small town in Appalachia called Abingdon. And we have the Symphony of the Mountains, which at the time it was off and on. Now it's back on. They found some more funding and they're doing some really great things there. But I had never really grown up around classical music. But I did grow up singing in church and also with a children's choir. We had a big children's choir in the area. So I grew up doing that and was a harpist and played the piano. So that was like my musical upbringing. But
Did you
I
take lessons there?
I did. I took Celtic harp lessons and then I took piano lessons, which turned into singing lessons,
Great. So you can actually
strangely.
read music, right? You're a musician.
And that I started as a pianist and strangely had some I started doing competitions, had some issues with stage fright with piano, but I'm very talkative social person. And my teacher was like, "You sing in the children's choir. What about singing?" And for some reason, singing to me didn't hit that same nerve of stage fright as playing the piano did. So it was an easy transition. And I thought, well, this is a great way that I can still make music, but I don't have that uncomfortable pain involved.
Right, right, right. Well, I mean, perhaps breathing has something to do with it too. Who knows? That's
Mhm.
great. That's a great story. So, where did you go to college, and where did you start studying music?
So I
In
went to, from Abingdon, I went to the University of Virginia and not really a well-known music school per se, but I did major in music, but it was more focused toward academic music, so musicology, and I was in choir there. I did college a cappella, doing some pop music, and I studied arts administration next to that. So I did a dual degree in music and arts administration, thinking that I would go into the music business in a way, not necessarily thinking of myself as a performer. And after University of Virginia, I took a year off of school to work for a musicologist, Marita McClemens, who has done some great work on Niccolo Jommelli and aria structure. So I learned a lot about singing through her. And she also had a career as a singer. It was the first time I sort of thought, oh, okay, she has this musicology side, but she also has a deep love of performing. So after that experience, I took that year to apply to schools. I thought, I want to go to grad school for singing. I want to continue singing. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back the business route. Not sure. But
Did she give you lots of advice about that application process and teachers and things like that?
she did. She she did give a lot of good advice as a musician, advice with the actual craft, I would say. But I would say coming from UVA, because it wasn't a performance school, when I was applying for graduate school, I didn't know people contacted teachers beforehand. I didn't know the amount of research that people were doing visiting. So I kind of went in blind and I got very lucky, I have to say, with my applications. I didn't get into very many schools and I ended up choosing Indiana University. And I,
Not a bad address.
yeah, well, I'm very, very happy I did. And actually, when I had already gotten in, I had looked up on Facebook a couple people going, and they said, "Oh, who are you studying with?" And I said, "I don't know. I guess they'll just tell me when I get there." Clueless, totally clueless. And a friend of mine, I was singing that summer with Charlottesville Opera, one of the Drei Knaben in Magic Flute. They let some of the UVA students, I auditioned for them. And so I got to meet one of the young artists who was a student at Indiana University. And he said,
Uh-huh.
"You have to contact teachers." So I contacted Costanza Cucaro, Miss Cucaro, and she took me as her student. And it was
What
a
voice was she? What did she sing and what voice was she? Is she?
she a coloratura soprano and had a long career in Germany, a lot in Zurich and in Deutsche Oper Berlin. And she usually doesn't have any space in her studio. She's retired now. Um, but somebody dropped the morning I emailed her.
It was
And
meant to be. It was meant to be.
mhm. So I ended up at IU studying with her, which I'm very thankful for because it ended up being a very good mix and also was my first inspiration, kind of imagination of what a career could be like in Germany. The amount
Sure.
people, yeah. So I think it was a good mix.
And so where did you go from there?
So from Indiana University, I finished my master's there and I applied for the Georgina Joshi Foundation grant, which is something that IU offers to come to Germany to kind of study the financial system of opera in Germany. So I got a grant for 3 months to kind of study the fest system, how it's set up financially, how it's working, if there's anything I could bring back to America. But what happened was they came to Berlin and fell in love with all of the music going on over here. Going to the Komische Oper Berlin, I completely just was like, I love this place. It's so entertaining, so different than what I was used to seeing that
Right.
I decided I wanted to stay and instead of studying the system, be on stage and be a part of it. So that's when the mad auditioning started.
And about when was that?
That was would be 2017.
2017. Okay.
Hmm.
You were here during during the COVID site as well.
Yes. Yes.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Amazing. And I mean, it was a terrible time for singers, but they managed to keep it going, even so, uh,
Hmm.
in Germany. I was very glad to be retired, I must say. But hats off. So tell me about um, getting to Oldenburg. How did you do that? Who did you sing for? How did you make a career in Germany?
Mm. So my first, when I came over on this grant, I started contacting agents and found out about Opera Base. And I thought, oh, wow, here's their contact information. I can just start writing people. And I did a very odd thing. I love stationery and I always think it's, all of us have these papers or something lying around that we don't feel good about throwing away and it just stays on our desk forever. So I wrote them, I printed out my resume and I mailed it to them. Um, and then I also, of course, emailed them like a modern day person. And I did get a couple comments about that it was unusual to get something in the mail. I tried to make it look very nice and memorable, um,
Right,
because they get a lot of um, Anfrage, a lot of emails, I'm sure, from people. And
right, yeah, right.
from there, I met an agent who never heard me live even, but said, "Okay, I'll send you to a couple auditions. We'll see how it
Wow.
goes." And
Do you want to say that who that was, or is that sort of irrelevant?
Samantha Farber,
Okay,
with Sono Artist. She's based in Vienna, and she was incredibly helpful and very gave me some very good advice early on in my career. And that one of the first of those auditions was for Glyndebourne for the covers. And I ended up getting the cover. It was for Brett Dean's Hamlet, a world premiere there. And that was
Hmm.
my first job when I came over here. So I went to cover at Glyndebourne, met incredible people, felt very imposter syndrome comes to mind. But it was amazing to be in that environment and start making those connections, which is then how I did the Glyndebourne, then they had the tour, which I stayed and covered that as well. And then I went back to Berlin, which was always kind of my home base, which was, I think, a great place to be. And a couple of the contacts there were working at Komische Oper Berlin. So I asked that same agent, I said, I really would love to work there. It was late spring, and I knew that there were some holes in their casting that they were desperate to kind of figure out before the season ended. So I asked for an informative audition. They heard, I think, two people on at lunchtime on a Tuesday, and I got cast as Papagena and Berta. And we went to Opera Comique in Paris, and that was where I made my official debut as Papagena in the Barry Kosky Zauberflöte.
Right,
And
right.
then came back and did Berta, small role, and but I learned incredible amount doing that with some of these artists on stage, and of course asked a million questions about what it's like to be a fest singer. And that's when I started talking with my agent. I really wanted to be fest somewhere, and preferably somewhere actually where I could sing some roles.
Right.
And
No, so yes, and tell us about, because you got into Oldenburg, which is it's a funny theater because it's small and it's almost sort of isolated, but it
mhm.
really has a very good reputation. And for a long time, I sang there and knew people who sang there, and it's a very special place actually, I believe. So tell us about that, what it gave to you.
Yeah, I think I will always be very much indebted to Oldenburg. I just moved away on Sunday
Well, you're in
and
Karlsruhe now.
in Karlsruhe now, starting Vorprobe for next season. But it became a family to me. It became like a home team where I started, my first role there was Eurydice and Orpheus in der Unterwelt, Orpheus in the underworld.
Right.
And I did Gilda that first season, these like larger roles that I wouldn't have been able to sing at a bigger place.
Exactly. Exactly.
And for me, that was absolutely crucial. And because uh, there was a lot of support in Oldenburg. It feels very much like a family, and the audience is very kind. And if you kind of you try and you try to expand yourself artistically and do something to step in a direction that you want to go, it's a safer environment to try things.
Yes, and to develop. I mean, that's one of the
Mhm.
great things about the German system is that you can, Familientheater,
Yeah.
as they say, is really actually a very wonderful thing because it's an audience that knows, that has seen the same production several times. Sometimes, I mean, I was told, oh yes, I heard Peter Hoffmann sing that, 7 years ago. It's like these are people that know and yet are friendly and are glad to see you. And when you do well, they're even happier.
Hmm.
Uh, and the ensemble too. The ensemble at Oldenburg strikes me as a very nice group.
Absolutely. I think that was also one of the very informative things. There are a few people in the ensemble when I first got there that really knew the ropes, that gave a lot of great advice, especially when it comes to your first season in a fest is like you're frantically learning music. Sometimes you're responsible at a house size like that for seven, upwards to 11 roles. And then early in your career, probably haven't sung them before. So it's all new music.
Right.
You have to learn, and then keeping your voice healthy as well is like a challenge. And I learned very quickly from all the other singers in Oldenburg how to handle the learning and workload in a way.
That's a great thing and terrifically important. American singers don't just they just don't have that experience. Contrast a little bit of what you learned in Germany to what you experienced in the States.
Yeah, I think I talk about this a little bit. I came over for this grant and I was here for 3 months. And then I went back to the US because I was still finishing up my schooling. I sang Rosina at IU, wanted to get that last performance in. And then really, I did a couple young artist programs in the US and was
Oh, you did.
dissatisfied. I
Which ones?
did
Which ones did you do?
I did Opera North 2 seasons. I sang Marie and Daughter of the Regiment and Blondchen, my first Blondchen there.
Hmm.
And I, not to say I was dissatisfied with the program, it's a beautiful place. And I think I'm so happy that it exists in the US, that there's a orchestra and a engaged audience up there in New Hampshire. But I just thought there's not enough work. I want to sing. How am I going to make it through all of these roles? And like time's a ticking in a way. I need to be somewhere where there's like a lot more happening. And also, I just felt like, I don't know, dissatisfied with the ups and downs of 4 performances and then it's over.
And then a break. Yeah, right. That really is one of the different. I mean, I also was like that. I liked singing, 70, 80, 100 performances a year. This was good. And yes, you had to work hard, but that's you're doing what you love. So, and there's not this business of, waiting tables in between, performance runs.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's really for certain people it's very ideal.
Hmm.
Uh, so have gone. You've been in Oldenburg six seasons, and now you're going to Karlsruhe. Talk to me a little bit about so who got you the job in Karlsruhe, and how did that happen? And also, you seem very fortunate. They seem to be taking the Norina and the Pagliacci as well
Hmm.
um, from Oldenburg. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting thing that happens a lot, and it's my first experience with this. We have an Intendant Wechsel. So the Intendant has changed in Oldenburg. So the Intendant in Oldenburg has moved to Karlsruhe, and he's taken a handful of singers with him from Oldenburg.
Ah, okay.
So this is how I ended up here. And I find that industry wise a bit interesting because I've worked with this intendant for the last 6 years. So when it came to the contract negotiation, instead of doing that with my agent, I did it myself, which saves everyone money,
Right.
which can also become a something that can help you actually negotiate for yourself because you're saving money in both places. But it's also that connection helped me make that jump from one thing to the next.
Right. And you're also, you're actively involved in the details of the business, which is important as a singer.
Hmm. Yeah, and it was also it's also interesting the other side of it too, going through the whole intendant change process because we had to like a change of a presidency, you have to officially resign as well, or you have to officially be fired, even if you're
Right.
going on with the next intendant to the next theater. So my because I studied arts administration, I was very curious what that process was like. And the new intendant in Oldenburg was kind enough to, I said, hey, I want you to fire me as you officially have to because I want to know what the official Kundigung is like. You know, what do you have to
Oh, very
say?
good for you.
But I thought it
You
was
also get,
very,
do you also get more, I mean, at least in my time, you get Arbeitslosgeld, unemployment. It's better to be fired, yes, I think,
mhm,
than because one of the nice things about Germany is the unemployment system. You really can, benefit, and you're building up a retirement, and there's a difference between quitting and being fired.
mhm. That was uh, an interesting talk that we had with the GDBA, the union, which is
Yes.
also something very different than the US. We have AGMA in the US, but GDBA, I found I'm a member. I urge every singer to be a member. Fantastic resource and something I like to be involved in. But we spoke to them and about that difference between letting them fire you legally or you putting in your resignation and the financial implications of both of those things. Yeah.
Great. No, no, and GDPR is a wonderful resource. Yes, you're quite right about that.
There's still, I mean, it all is very messy and legalistic, but for me personally, I wanted to walk through that experience of being fired, the Kundigung, because I was curious legally what that experience is like. But it is, and probably don't quote me, and we went a lot of back and forth with the KDB, all lawyers about this, but it is more beneficial for getting that Arbeitslosengeld if you let them fire you. But in our case, luckily, we had this big conversation about that, the differences, and then both of the theaters kind of talked and arranged our contracts so that we didn't have to apply for Arbeitslosengeld and kind of did a week here in Karlsruhe, then Oldenburg pays, and then a week there. So ultimately it was okay, but it would have been a matter of Arbeitslosengeld, which also affects your health care.
Right. This is, but this is one of the nice things about the German system. The people in the theaters are aware of these things. They're willing to work them out, and they're willing to work with you. Some of them, not all of them, but so it's a system that everybody understands. Everyone is a part of, and it can be a really helpful thing. And yes, the major difference between being fired and quitting is that you get, I think it's 6 weeks of Arbeitslosengeld that you wouldn't, unemployment benefits that you
Mhm.
wouldn't normally get. And yes, they pay, they also, if you are getting unemployment benefits, they pay part of your health care, and it's very complicated and very bureaucratic,
Mhm.
but it has actually been worked out to the benefit of singers over 100 years, and it does help.
Yeah, it's
Good
just
for
a
you that
matter
you
of
wanted to experience that. That's really wonderful. Martha,
how.
tell us a little bit about what you learned about protecting yourself and balancing all this repertoire. Sometimes many small parts, but also sometimes parts that really aren't, necessarily totally your voice type, but that you are required to sing. How did you manage all that?
I think that's one of the biggest important questions for people going into a fest for the first time. For me, my other hobby is as a marathon runner. So endurance sport is something that I am always mapping onto singing, especially in a fest, because it is exactly what we're doing. If you're doing I would say more than 40 performances a season. You are fully in endurance sport territory with all these muscles, your support and everything. Um, so for me, I think there are two aspects to this question. The first is um, learning the massive amount of music that you're responsible for, memorizing it all, coming up with all the different techniques you need to learn a score quickly and efficiently, memorize it, and then also be okay with mistakes. I think in America we're very much trained to that first, and I think it's something we should all aim for still, but that first rehearsal with the conductor, everything should be perfectly memorized and worked out. And yes, that's what we should be aiming for. But in a fest, the reality is if you are singing, I think my biggest season was like ten roles in one season, many of which were larger roles, some of which I had done before, but you're just not going to be able to, show up for some rehearsals sometimes perfectly as prepared as you might want to, as a American would be trained, and to be able to make those rehearsals useful for you and to make very large strides in short amount of time. I think that's the first thing to learn. And then the second is like the physical aspect of that, learning learning where your technique baseline is and when you've strayed from it and how to get yourself back to it. Signs of injury. Injury is something that happens with over singing. It can happen if you have a fantastic technique, but you have a cold, you have a little bit of heartburn, something like that. And it's also something you can generally, if you have the right support and teachers, something that you can recover from. So you can take that stress off the table if you kind of check for those warning signs to be sure you're healthy. So you also have to know when to cancel. Um, and the more you understand your body, the more confidently you'll be able to say, I have to cancel. You'll be able to do it earlier, which is less stress for everyone else involved. Um, so I would say those are the kind of two sides of that question.
Right, and canceling is a very important thing in a German in any in for anybody
Mhm.
when but it's something that you do learn in a theater, and it's important to know. Part of it is also that the in the German theater they're doing it all the time, so they're used to people getting sick and being human.
Hmm.
And it's tremendously important to learn that, to learn when to say no. That's fantastic. What do you do? Do you do any kind of exercises? What physical things do you do? And also, do you have a teacher there in Germany?
I do. I try to just stay healthy, do the things. It's like I think the best way to keep the voice healthy is the things that we know how to know what to do, but we just might not do them, like good sleep, good water. Um, I shouldn't say this, but it is something I think a lot of fest singers do. If you have 5 or 6 shows a week, at the end of it or at the night before, I'll take maybe one ibuprofen occasionally when the singing load is very heavy, just to de-swell anything for me. Um, I have a little bit of acid reflux if I'm singing a very high role, for example. So I just kind of have some reflux drugs when I
Sure.
need. Um, so just kind of staying on top of the basics, but sleep and water for me are like very key. And then
Right.
I do have a teacher in Germany, Roberta Cunningham. She's in Berlin.
Yes.
And she, yeah, she's been a fantastic person to go to, especially when problems arise or singing a role that maybe is a little bit out of my fach, but you'll end up singing some things that might not be perfectly suited for you, and that can turn into a beautiful, unusual thing.
Right. I was going to ask, if you don't mind, about Nedda. For instance, you're singing Nedda in Pagliacci, and
Mhm.
is that at Karlsruhe as well?
It won't. I'll be singing at the same exact time they're rehearsing Norina. And if
Uh-huh.
someone gets sick, I know the production, I'll be there to sing it.
Right, because that's what you do in a German theater. You're
Mhm.
there just in case.
Yeah. So if the opportunity arises, but I'll be rehearsing another piece. And I was very happy to get that opportunity to sing Neda in Oldenburg because it is quite a step out of what I normally sing. But I
Right,
have to say I really learned an incredible amount. And I only did 2 or 3 performances, and it was a Wiederaufnahme, which is stressful for the mind, but less work for the voice, not
right.
so much. But I learned an incredible amount doing it. So
This is one of the great things also about having a fast job. You do those things and you can learn from them immensely.
mhm. Yeah. Oh, that's negotiating the rules for the upcoming season is a very good question because I believe every role leaves its imprint on your voice, if not your soul, and can change, can pull your technique in one direction or the other. And I would say my contract in Oldenburg, it was Coloratura Sopran, lyrische Coloratura Sopran mit angrenzende Partien. So lyric coloratura soprano with any roles that touches those that Fach, which meant I could sing a lot of things technically by contract, Neda being one of them. Um, and for me, Neda felt like a positive decision after was talking with my teacher, because I'm moving from singing things like Blondchen, things with a lot of kind of very high coloratura, to like a step more in the lyric direction, just a step. But that was about 10 steps, but it still gave me some role to experiment with. But I have had other situations where, coming from singing things like Blondchen, Zerbinetta, very high repertoire, as I get older, I don't want to sing such high repertoire anymore. And then came Controller in Jonathan Dove. It's high F, very, very high. And if it had been a season later, I would have had to negotiate out of that. And doing so would be very tricky because you're hired to sing a certain repertoire, and when you start aging but you're still in the system, your voice will change over time. You really have to delicately navigate your way out of, you know, singing those roles and into singing others. And I think that just has to be done with open, honest conversations and slowly. And I also think if your work is obvious, people will start to see it too.
And this is one of the things that singers do learn, in theaters, is that you can talk with these people, at least some of them,
Mhm.
uh, and discuss whether a role is appropriate for you, and how much it, or if it's really inappropriate, especially given what else you're doing at the time. This is something that is part of the theatrical conversation in a fest
Mhm. And
position.
it's also the theater size is about 800. So you think, okay, I jumped in to sing Helmwege, for example, as well. And I thought this is not necessarily something I would, but it's a small theater. You can get by with staying
Right,
in your technical box and staying healthy and just saying it's up to the conductor to get the orchestra going.
right, right. Which is also part of the business, not always what people are willing to do, and sometimes they just they will play louder. But this is also part of the business of being a singer, and one of the joys of being in Germany. You can actually talk about these things. So, Martha, did you not know when you came to Germany that you would like young singers to know?
Oh man, I have a long list of things that I didn't know when I moved over here. I think uh, probably one of the biggest things that held me back originally, that was a hurdle, was that I didn't know that young singers could work with an agency. Um, I had this preconceived notion in my mind. I think a lot of Americans might, and I hope that it's waning, that only Renee Fleming has an agent, only the big names have agents. And um, you have to already be famous to be represented. And when I came over here, I started talking to singers, and I thought there are singers that are coming out of the conservatories, like in Berlin, who know that they can already start, doing a competition, contacting an agent and making those relationships early. And when I started auditioning over here, my agent even set up some auditions with some opera studios, which I was very surprised to learn. I thought, what's this? It's like a young artist program. You apply on Yap Track or you do this thing. It's like a school application. There are a lot of rules, but it was a little bit more Wild West situation. And I wish I had known that you could already start kind of having an eye towards the professional world when you're already a student and connecting with agents that they're out there looking for younger singers. Some of them can provide good. advice, some not. It depends. But I think that's the thing that I wish I had known was like how to contact them and that it was okay at that stage to do so.
Right. How much German did you speak when you came here?
Not none at all. None at all. And now I would say I'm decently fluent and I enjoy singing in German. I sing a lot in German. I'll do Fledermaus this season. I enjoy German dialogue, German operetta. I fell in love with the language.
Did
Uh,
you study at a school or did you just learn it in rehearsals?
I just learned it. Part of my grant was the Goethe Institute.
Uh-huh.
And I would say if I was paying out of pocket, I would not go that route. But because I had this grant, I used part of it to do Goethe Institute. And then when I was in Berlin, I found a cheaper option, which is GLS Berlin. And I
Which
found
is GLS
GLS Berlin.
in
Mhm.
English. Okay.
And they were fantastic. Their classes were a little more than a little more affordable. They've had a lot of opera singers go through, and I think I learned a lot there. And then moving to Oldenburg is really when I learned the most German because you have the social pressure of working in that language. You'll learn fast.
Right, right, right. So now tell us, I understand that you do something similar to this site, and you have consult and you teach and you help young singers perhaps make a career in Germany, make a life in music in Germany, which is what you can do here. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so I basically came out of I've been over here, I guess, 6, 7 years by now. And I started a couple years ago just to get a lot of questions, and they were the same questions over and over again. So I kind of just kept that list of questions that younger singers or singers just starting out kept asking, like, hey, how'd you make it over there? What is the first step you would take? Uh, Questions about agents, questions about visas. That's a big question. A lot of questions about daily life, if it's something that they can see themselves being happy with doing, because it is a big thing to leave home, to leave your family. And so I kind of just kept track of all those questions and made a course around it because I just thought I'll just put this all in one place because probably several times every month I was getting the same kind of requests from people over Instagram or I did a couple master classes here and there and contacts from there. And I thought I just put this information in one place and
And where is that now?
it's on my Instagram, and I have a website link there to Opera Career Guide Germany is the website.com, operacareerguide.com. And that's where the course lives. And it's basically an hour and a half course that I talk through of slides and then a workbook that accompanies it, lists of competitions, lists of opera studios that you can apply to, and a little common questions asked on how to contact agents, like what is the actual email going to look like? What should you include? Um, a little bit about following up. I'm big on following up with people. I think it's really important because everyone's busy. Just because you don't get a response, it's often because people are busy. Not, it's sometimes not because it's a no. It's also a really competitive industry, so you have to continue to like build those relationships however you can. So a lot of that is included in the course. And
Now tell us again slowly the web address and how people will find this.
it's called operacareerguide.com, Opera Career Guide. And if you search for me or Opera Career Guide Germany, you'll find it. And
Great.
it's also available on my Instagram.
Oh, on Instagram, right. Yes, okay. Great. Um, how do you, so you studied business and now you are in the business both of opera and you know teaching. How important is the entrepreneurial aspect, do you think?
I think it's a good question. I think I enjoy my entrepreneurial side actually more as a singer. Um, Trying to because being a singer is I've considered myself a one woman business. So I enjoy working with agents, but more on a collaborative basis. I think that's really important that you have some authority over your career, where you are and what you're singing and how you're being perceived. And then with my course, that really grew out of a desire to answer some of these questions that I see aren't being necessarily answered in the American education system right now in conservatories. So if I can kind of fill that hole for people and give them information, I really would love to be able to do that because I'm very thankful to be here. And I also see I'm only just a step removed out of school, further and further each season. But I also think that I got a lot of these questions because I was just one step ahead, which I think a little bit easier for people to see
Right. Yes.
their
Then
next.
somebody who's been there 25 years. I mean, yes. So you're in rehearsal now, and when does your Sommerferien, your summer vacation begin?
It begins July 21st. Yeah. So
Okay, and go on.
we have what's called Vorproben, so the pre-rehearsal period for the first piece next season, which will be the Wreckers by Ethel Smythe.
Smythe. Oh, it's an interesting piece actually.
Harry.
Uh, what is your role in that?
I'll be singing Avis, which is, I think, the only character in opera more evil than Scarpia. So I'm very excited.
It's quite a honker, as I understand it.
hmm hmm
The piece. It'll be interesting to hear that. I'll definitely tune in. There'll undoubtedly be some kind of excerpts from it.
Definitely.
Um, when does that be? Now, when does that actually open?
Late September. We'll open in late September.
Great, great. That'll be a lot of fun. And you have quite a season. You have quite a season. You're doing Rosalinda and no, not Rosalinda, Adele, and in Fledermaus and Norina. It's great, and not to mention Sophie. So that's really a fun time.
It'll be a good season, I think. Lots of very varied repertoire.
So
Yeah.
okay, so Martha, how would you suggest to young American singers who are still there in the States, but want to participate in this whole business and this life, what would you give as your top tips to begin?
I would say to begin, focus on your craft every single day. Like practice every single day. Sing every single day that you're vocally healthy. Do your exercises, work on your technique so that you have that as your basis. And then I would say research, talk to as many people as possible and try to connect with them to create a network that's going to catch you and help you accomplish the things that are your personal, very clearly defined goals with what you want to accomplish with your singing. And I think if you have those clear goals of what you want to do with your voice and the types of roles you want to sing, the houses you want to sing them at, that is clear in your imagination, then it's just a matter of finding how to get there. Yeah.
What resources would you suggest that singers look at?
I'll suggest some very logistical ones. I would say when it comes to your visa, you're going to have to get your visa out of the way. There's a great organization business in Berlin called Expats in Wonderland. I've worked with them directly, helping another musician get his visa, actually an instrumentalist, to come over and play in orchestras over here. Expats in Wonderland, they specialize in freelance artist visas, which will legally allow you to work in this country, which is a great thing to be able to tell agents and companies, hey, you can hire me tomorrow. I have my visa. Um,
Hmm.
one less hurdle for anyone else to figure out. That would be a logistic one. GLS Berlin, to learn language, to learn your German. Um, let's see. I would also, there's a woman named Lorna Price who has a German course for musicians that's very, very well priced, that is personalized exactly for musicians coming over. She's English. She's in Great Britain. Um, so those would be three very logistical resources. And then my favorite resource is Opera Base, um, to find contact information for agents that you want to contact, and even some smaller opera houses themselves. If you want to ask directly for an informative um, Vorsingen, an audition, you can even write or call the opera house yourself. And so Opera Base would be that resource as well. Yeah.
It gives you all the information on the theaters, how to contact them, and the agents, also on performances and that are upcoming, and artists. And you can look up Martha and her career on Opera Base. It's a great resource, and I used it for many years.
I love there's a side of me that's very adventurous, that has always wanted to live in Europe and wanted to travel the world. Yet I also need stability to thrive, especially the older I get, to create a life for myself. And this career in Germany has given me both. When I have free time, I can go running through Italy. I can go anywhere over here I've never seen before, um, or work in places I've never been before. But the system, the FES system, has given me a stability to be able to actually do those things when I have time off. And that's something that I didn't see for myself in the US, that stability, the healthcare, the pension fund, the amount of work that feels stable, that makes me happy with the same people every day, similar people every day.
No, I think we've covered it all. You told us exactly what the advantages of life in music in Germany are, and how to get there. It's not an easy road, and you don't always know if you have the right stuff. But if you do, it'll be clear pretty soon. And Martha's a great example of it because she's doing it right now, and making a real go of it. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was so lovely to meet you all.
Great to meet you.